Welcome everybody to episode number 8. This is welcome to the discussion. We've got well, before we get started, we better say this. We are simply an extension of the Facebook group Type 1 Diabetics for 50 years plus. And all discussions are open and unedited. And these are the participants' personal experiences, and expressed comments or opinions are not to be taken as medical advice of any kind. Always check with your doctors before making any changes to your medications or therapies. So we have Karen, my beautiful wife here, type 1 for 59 years. And we've got Marcy, a type 1 for 52 years. Thank you, Marcy.
Yes.
And our special guest today is John Robert Wiltgen, and I believe it's 57 years. Have I got that right?
58 now.
58 years? Okay.
Yeah.
We welcome you, John. And I am so excited to have you here. I really am, because you've posted a number of times in our group, and I finally got around to starting your book.
Okay.
And I just feel,
people tell me when they start it, they can't put it down, but you have obviously done that.
because I had to do the interview, but I really believe I'm in for a ride reading this book.
Okay.
Just starting it, yeah.
It's also taken me a while to complete the book, and it's not because it's not interesting and exciting, because I found it very interesting and exciting, very witty, and I loved the book. But I don't read often, but that's what I picked up every time I read. So it's taken me a while. And you had requested that I put a review on Amazon for you, and I must admit that I did it at 1 o'clock today. Okay.
Okay, awesome. That's great. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
You know, I have a hard time reading also because I am legally blind. And so looking at the print of a book, it's challenging. And by the time I get done with half a chapter, my eye is watering and turning red. And so reading has become a challenge. I have not yet taken to ebooks because I like the feel of a book in your hand. I like turning the pages, and I like sticking my marker in there when I've stopped, so it's interesting that I could spend the time writing a book, but have not been reading as much as I used to.
Right. Well, I'm in the same boat also. And I used to read like 3 books a week or so. And now it's just like, I don't know what it is, but I'm like you. I like to open the book. I like to turn the pages. And I miss it. But anyway, it'll be okay, right? We do what we have to do.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Someone gave me, oh, excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt, Karen. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I used to read all the time as well, but now as my eyes get very tired, so I can only read for short periods of time. But I have to say, John, your house is lovely.
Do you know what? Actually, this is not my house. This is one of my clients' homes.
Okay.
And I uploaded my house to the Zoom thing, but it never seems to show up. The other thing that does show up is Hearst Castle, which I wish was my home.
Okay. Well, I was going to say the decor is lovely. So if that was you, it's awesome.
Do you know what? I did this job 15 years ago.
Wow. It's still very in style, very trendy. It's lovely.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's beautiful. You're very creative, and you put it to good work. And that really excites me, hearing about your endeavors, the jobs that you did that you list in your book. Are you still doing this kind of work?
Well, I've scaled it way back. I don't want to ruin the ending for you in the book, but I got really sick with 4 different kinds of pneumonia. And I was in ICU for 18 days, and then in the regular room for several days after that, and then went home with an oxygen tank and 45 feet of tubing. And at that point, I realized that I just could not work the same way I had been in the past. I mean, I used to have 10 people on staff working for me, plus a publicist and an accountant and a lawyer and, you know, all these other people, which meant that I had to work 12 hours a day to pay everybody else before I got the opportunity to pay me. And so I essentially what I told people was I retired, but people have begged me to come out of retirement. And so
Exactly.
in fact, I was on the phone today with a client in Naples, Florida for like an hour and a half. And I'm doing the lobby for a new building that's going up, and I'm doing a home for a client of mine. He bought an auto repair shop and has turned it into the most magnificent home. So really most of the credit goes
Wow.
to him, but he needed my advice on the kitchen and bathrooms. The kitchen island is 18 feet long.
Oh my
Wow.
goodness.
It's
Wow.
enormous. You know,
Wow.
it's like, how do you get from one end of the island to the other when you're preparing food or doing whatever? The sink is in the very center of all of that, but it's
So does it
Wow.
have slides that you can slide from one end to the other? Or?
no, but it should. And
Wow. Wow.
it's got a 3,000 square foot garage. Are you all in Canada?
Well,
Where
Del
are
and I are.
you? Okay, so then do I have to talk in meters or can?
No,
I'm
go
in the
for it. We
USA
can
and you,
convert,
Okay,
John.
so
Go
but
for
a
it.
3,000
Yeah.
square foot garage, he has a garage door big enough for a fire truck because he always wanted to have a fire truck when he was a
oh
kid.
my goodness.
Now,
You
John,
know,
you say you're legally blind, but
uh-huh,
you're still designing these projects. So
yes.
how much vision do you have, or do you see it in your mind's eye? Your visual acuity in your mind is just so accurate that you can continue to do, you can form the picture in your mind and carry on from there.
I am totally blind in one eye.
Oh,
What
okay.
happened was when I was getting laser surgery years ago, the retina tore right down the middle.
Right. Yeah.
So in that eye, I cannot see. And that's a very common coincidence for people that had laser surgery, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
In the other eye right now, I have 17% vision,
Okay.
and that is reducing
Yeah.
as time goes by. So 17% means that when I put my hand here or here, I don't see them. I have no peripheral vision
Peripheral vision. Yeah.
at all. So like when I'm walking down the street, I'm tripping over baby carriages and bumping into people. And I mean, it's unless I'm with someone who can take me by the arm and say, we're going to stop or whatever.
Yeah.
It's
John,
challenging.
I'm exactly the same. I had so many lasers done about 30, 40 years ago, and I have absolutely no peripheral vision either. So that's what I tell to people. If you're standing right beside me and I don't acknowledge you, I'm not being rude. I just can't see you.
Right. Well, and when I meet new people, I have to tell them, you're on my totally blind side, and if
yeah,
on the other side, you're on my almost totally blind side.
yeah, yeah,
Plus,
yeah,
I'm deaf in one ear, so it's like if you sit over there, I'm not going to hear a word you're saying.
yeah.
Um,
I got to tell you, shopping is an experience because Karen hits all the buggies, but she doesn't see the buggies. When somebody's walking inside with a buggy, I
oh
got to
yeah.
put up my hand. Stop, Karen, stop.
Oh my God, so I try to go to Costco. And we try to go when there's like less people. There are never less people. There's always like a ton of people, and I push the grocery cart, which is a disaster. But yeah,
It's a challenge.
it's challenging.
What about just walking? Karen runs into this. Just walking, going for a walk outside and an uneven sidewalk. Because peripheral vision is one thing, right? But the up and down is a disaster as well for Karen. How about
Yeah.
yourself?
Curbs, cracks in the sidewalk. I mean, all of that stuff makes it so much more difficult. Now, I live in a building that when it was built in 1924, it was,
Wow.
yeah, exactly. It was the largest building in the world. And at that time, it was known as the American Furniture Mart, which was different from the Merchandise Mart. But it has a gallery on the ground floor that is exactly a block long. And so for me to get my exercise, I will go at nighttime and walk back and forth down that hallway because there are no curbs, there's no cracked sidewalks.
Yeah.
It's just all marble flooring. And you know, with my headphones on, I'm just kind of rocking out and there's no one there, so it doesn't matter, you know.
Yeah.
And that is like the biggest freedom that I can share with people, you know, that and swimming, because we have a indoor pool in our building that no one uses, and so I can swim my laps back and forth also, and bring my wireless speaker and blast it while I'm swimming, you know.
Yeah.
Those are the two things that I do to get my exercise in.
Yeah, yeah. I do most of my walking on the treadmill
Okay, well,
downstairs.
there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
I
Or
don't do
mall.
enough walking.
Well, and I must confess, I don't get enough in either, because there's always something on my computer for me to answer, to reply to particularly because I am working, and so now I'm doing everything, you know, the accounting and the designing and meetings with clients and things like that. So it's like back to square one, except on a very different level. My square one today is so different than when I first started when I was 18 years old.
Wow, wow.
Well, it's interesting. Again, I'm just starting your book, and for
Okay,
everybody,
so what does that mean? How far along are you?
you're about 18 years old, and it's like diabetes be damned.
Right. Yeah.
And I just know where this is going. I'm going for a ride of this thing. So like it's right at the beginning. And
Do you
I think
know,
you got your first long car at that point too, if I remember right.
yeah. You know, the thing is, I'm sure when we were all diagnosed, we were told back then in the olden days that we probably wouldn't live to see 40,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
See?
That's
And
what I was told. Yes.
right. So what I wanted to do was to get it all in, to live
Exactly before
experience.
40.
Right, before I turned 40. And when I turned 40, some very dear friends of mine threw a surprise birthday party for me because they thought that, like, in the next year or two, I was going to be gone. And there was over 100 people there. People flew in from both coasts. A client of mine from Toronto came. It was such a big deal, and to their dismay, I'm still here.
I know.
The irony was like, what did we do that for?
You
You know?
didn't die. How dare you?
Right. Yeah. So, you know, us type 1 diabetics are survivors.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that should be like tattooed on each one of our wrists, you know, I'm a survivor.
Right.
Because this is a disease that you live with every single day. You're worrying about your blood sugar, worrying about the carbs, worrying about the exercise, worrying about the drugs you're taking. I mean, all of that. It's not, and I hate to say this, but it's not like having cancer for 5 years and going through radiation and getting chemotherapy. But after a certain period, that's all over for most people. And I understand that, yes, there are circumstances where it is not. But on the other hand, I mean, you were doing it, Karen, for what, 52 years? Is that what the
59.
59? Okay, so you get it. It, you know, were you peeing in a cup and doing the test tube thing with the
Yeah, glass syringes on the stove. I was 2.5 when I was
glass syringes? Yes, that we boiled, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And weekly trips to the hospital for a blood test because we didn't have glucose, like Dexcoms or anything. Yeah, I was 2.5 when I was diagnosed, and I'll be 62 in June.
Oh God, 2.5. A couple weeks, well, it's been a month already. The Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation here in Chicago sponsored an event at one of the convention centers near the airport. And I was asked to be there, not as a speaker, but to sell my books.
Okay.
And I heard so many stories about people with kids. I mean, I was diagnosed when I was 8, but to hear stories about people who were diagnosed when they were 2.5, or there was an 18-month-old baby that was wearing a pump. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and these parents, this one family, perhaps she married a man who had been a type 1 diabetic for a long time. And so being married to this man, living with him, she thought she knew everything about it until their child was diagnosed with it. And it was like a totally different
Yeah.
Yeah.
game, you know? Because the husband had already understood the situation and what he needed to do to take care of himself versus this little kid who didn't get any of it and who, like all of us at that age, didn't want to be a diabetic. We wanted to be like everyone else. We didn't want to be different from them. And that was the hard part, I think, growing up with it as a juvenile, as opposed to someone who gets diagnosed when they're 25 or 30 or whatever. I think at that point in time, you've known other people have had it, you've read about it, so you have a little bit more understanding of what is what your life may be like. But but as children, I don't think that they get it. Although today it's totally different, and wearing a pump and a continuous glucose monitor makes their chances of survival so much easier than what our chances of
Ours were. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I think
And-
Marcy was a little later as well, right?
I was 15.
Or
And
15,
so
yeah.
I think last week, Lori Harper said that she was diagnosed at a very young age, like Karen. And she thought that it would be harder for me. Well, I've always thought that the 2-year-olds, the babies, would be so much harder than at 15. I didn't have any help with my care. It's really a wonder I'm alive, okay? But at 15, I don't remember anything before 15. I mean, to me, I've been a diabetic all my life, and I know that's a terrible way to look at it, but I immediately accepted the disease for some unknown reason, and I think that was very beneficial to me.
It's interesting just reading, John, the initial where I'm at, the growing up when you were diagnosed, and the change in lifestyle and eating habits within the family were very similar to what I heard from Karen as well. The diagnosis changed to healthier eating per se, and the brothers and the sisters and Karen found just, almost similar stories.
Yeah, my mom tried to convince everyone that they would be healthier eating that way, because like they were missing the upside down pineapple cake and the kolaczkis and things like that. But that's how we started. Now that's not how it continued. But my mom tried, we are at 8 years old, we were cooking in the kitchen. We were making cookies and pizza and making a mess out of her kitchen, I must say. But but because she wasn't making it for us, we were making it. We're like, oh, where's the sugar? Oh, where's the flour? Yeah.
Wow. See, and I was on the exchange diet. You'll probably remember the exchange,
Yes,
one for exchange,
absolutely.
one. And what I got on my plate was what I ate. I couldn't ask for seconds. I couldn't ask for more. If I was hungry, oh, well, it was kind of like what was on your plate is what you eat for that meal back then. It was like you didn't ask for seconds. You didn't ask for, It was, yeah, according to the exchange system and what I was allowed.
Right, a
And
half a cup of mashed potatoes.
yes,
I mean,
yeah,
it
yeah,
was measured up, meat was weighed,
yeah.
Right.
right?
That little
Or by the
kitchen
size
scale.
of your hand.
Yeah, yeah,
Right, yeah, this big, yeah. One fruit exchange, two
yeah,
vegetable exchanges,
yeah.
one fat. Yeah,
Yes, exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. And over the course of time, researchers have learned so much more than what we were taught way back then, and a lot of that has changed.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I'm also 38 years kidney transplant survivor.
Wow,
Change
Okay.
kidney.
congratulations.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
that's amazing.
I'm
It
stage
is,
4 kidney disease.
pardon me,
I'm stage 4 kidney disease.
but you've not had a transplant yet.
No.
Do you know who your donor's gonna be?
Well, Dell has
Maybe,
volunteered.
maybe.
Have they tested you for that?
So far, so good, just very preliminary.
Okay, and where are you gonna have it done?
Well, don't know. My EGFR, they won't even test us or get us ready. My EGFR is still, I'm at 18. And in Canada, they don't check you for transplant until your EGFR is like 7 or 5.
So when it's 7 or 5, do you have to go on dialysis?
I don't want dialysis. It's one of the things in my life. It was like, no, not doing it, not terrifies me to death. So I would like to be able to have a transplant without dialysis.
So I had a transplant without dialysis. I went right from total kidney failure
Hmm.
to having the transplant, and we had identified the donor. The donor was my mom.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect,
My,
yeah.
my sister and my brother were better donors than my mother, but she worried that with their own families as they grew up, if God forbid one of their children needed a kidney, she didn't want them to not have one to give. And
Right.
so she was 50 years old when she donated her kidney 38 years ago, when the success rate of a kidney transplant was just 60%. So
Right.
it's like,
Right. Right.
do you feel lucky? And when I went there, they're like, well, as long as you're having a kidney transplant, you also want a pancreas transplant. And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
no, because
That's
I was
not gonna work.
afraid that there would be something in that mixture that would go wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was very new. The success rate of the pancreas transplant was not nearly as good as the 60% for the kidney transplant. And
Right. Right.
so I said no. And like you, I was scared to death of having dialysis. And I was fortunate that I didn't need it. Now, 38 years later, I am stage 4 also, kidney failure, and I will not have dialysis, and I will not have another transplant. When you live for 38 years with a transplanted organ, you also live with all of those immunosuppressant drugs that go with it, enabling
Right.
you to keep that organ. And there are so many complications that come with that it's like if I started all over again with another transplant, my dosage of immunosuppressant drugs would be 3 times what I'm taking right now, or maybe more.
Wow.
And I have heart disease that could kill my heart. I have skin cancer like nobody would believe. And I go once every quarter for the Mohs treatment to have them carve away at me and get rid of that. I've had the entire side of my face cut open. I've had stuff from my nose removed. I've had stuff in places where the sun doesn't shine because of the immunosuppressive drugs that's
Yeah.
had to be either blowtorched or cut away. And then I also now have pulmonary fibrosis.
Mm.
And so there's just too many other things wrong with me.
Mm.
One of them is going to get me, so I'm not going to do another transplant.
Well,
But you
I'm
look
so
so healthy, John.
He
You
really
do.
does.
You
Really
look
you
does.
do
so
look
healthy.
healthy.
That's,
Yeah.
you know, yeah. I don't look really healthy with all my clothes off.
Neither do I.
That's fair.
Keep them on, baby. Keep them on.
Yeah.
Well, John, I'm so sorry you're going through all of these, and I understand. At this point in time in my life, I'm at peace with death, and I probably shouldn't say that out loud. I'm going to knock on wood, and I'm doing very well. And so when I get any of your, you know, the things that are going on with you, my idea may change, but I don't really think that it will, because I was blessed to live past that 40-year mark. And I look at it as I'm 27 years to the good. And that's a pretty long life. So that's kind of the way I look at it.
And I agree with you, Marcy. I mean, I've had an extraordinary life. I'm still having an extraordinary life, and I am thankful for every day that I get. But I'm also, you know what? I'm tired
Tired, yeah.
of this battle every single day. I mean, you know, I had my leg chopped off. I mean, there's just all
Mm,
kinds of stuff. It's just there's no end to the complications of diabetes. I listened to a lecture the other night where it said that the United States budget for or expenditures for healthcare, 33% of it was all related to diabetes and its complications. I mean, they may diagnose your death from heart disease, but the heart disease was a result of being a diabetic.
right.
And so you have to analyze all of those statistics and put them together. And yeah, they said that 33% of the expenditures was
That's
uh,
incredible.
yeah.
Incredible. Yeah, it really is.
So we really do need to hope that there's a cure, not just because of the financial aspect of it, but that's if they could eliminate that, think of what that would do to the world, not just to my country, but to everywhere, Canada.
You gotta believe we're as close as wherever, we've ever been right now. I mean, there's some stuff that's going on with the vertexes of the world and stuff that is really promising right now.
The islet cell transplants is the big thing. And that
Right.
was a doctor that I listened to for a lecture that he gave about that and how close they were. And years ago, there was another doctor, Jose Oberholzer, who was also working on developing islet cell transplants without the need for immunosuppressant drugs by encapsulating
Yeah.
the
Right.
cells. And so he had a team of doctors from all around the world. One was in Israel and one was in Norway. And I mean, they were just everywhere. The woman that was working on developing this encapsulation system was from Norway. And so we had a lengthy conversation because I had gone to Norway my first trip to Europe. So
What management are you on now for your insulin therapy?
I take Novolog through a pump, through
Your
a
pump.
T-Slim
Which
pump.
pump? Which pump are you on?
T-Slim?
Decent. Okay. We
Uh-huh.
got all three represented here today.
Okay. I started in the year like 2000, and at that time I went on a Medtronic pump.
Yeah.
And then I changed to the T-Slim like 3 years ago.
Okay.
I have to say, I guess I'm an old timer. The Medtronic pump did not need to be plugged in to be charged. You put a battery in it, and 30 or 45 days later, you change the battery. It was simple. I don't like, I have so many, I don't want to use an expletive. I have so many different charging lines, and it's like, well, which one goes to fit this? You know, one for my remote speaker, and one for my headphones, and one for my cell phone, and one for my pump, and one for my scale. It's like, why can't they make a universal charging cord that just
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
right? So I don't like that part of this pump. And the manufacturer of the pump, when I've spoken with them a million times, like, well, everybody likes it because it's so much smaller. I'm like, you know, you put it in your pocket or your purse or wherever. What difference does it make that it's a little thinner and a little shorter?
And they're saying this to a man with eye issues, right?
Well, and that I was just gonna say,
Yeah, that's a,
excuse me, that's the other problem is reading this screen. This screen is smaller than the Medtronic screen was, and the print on the Medtronic pump was bigger, which I happen to
Right.
yeah,
miss. I miss that
Yeah.
part of what I'm doing. But the Medtronic continuous glucose monitor was awful. And I mean, it would wake you up at 2 o'clock in the morning to calibrate it. And after 3 months of trying to live with that, I tore it off and told my doctor I'd never again was I going to use that. And so I went off of CGM again for a while. And then when my last Medtronic pump, when it was up as far as insurance was concerned, it was time for a new one, she switched me over to the T-Slim.
Yeah. I use the Medtronic 780G. It's completely different than those of old. With the G4 transmitter has made a big, big difference with all the alarms and stuff. I mean, I don't finger stick. I probably finger stick probably 4 times when I'm waiting for the warm up of the CGM. And it's pretty darn accurate. And so sometimes I even forget I have diabetes, and that's really hard to a hard thing to do, you know. So it's been a blessing for me, and I decided not to make the switch to a different system because the learning curve of learning the different system. And so I'm very glad that I stayed with the Medtronics and have the 780 now. But the 780 made a big difference.
Yeah, I didn't get that far. I was on the 670. Was that the last one? Before
The,
780?
there was I started on, I think, well, I had the 670, I had the 770, and with the 770 I did a software upgrade to the 780, and the 780 was leaps and bounds ahead of the 770. So but it's the G4, the G4 transmitter that made the difference, and it's very impressive, and I can't wait to see what they come out with next.
Do you have to then charge it with the charging cord?
I got a battery, baby.
I am so jealous. Wow. That's awesome. Okay. I am. I'm really jealous. But good to know.
we have
It's
a
okay.
few more, we have a couple more minutes here, guys. So I guess go with last questions here. Or...
Well, what else do you want to know that I can share with everybody, with your audience?
You know what, John? Just the attitude, just the aura of what you represent for the stuff that you've been through. I think you've already shared that, and that's what every member of the group does as well. It's a group that have managed this disease, self-managed, self-medicated through all the years, that just keep on keeping on. And you've just added another light to that. It's been really impressive from where I sit.
Yeah.
John, I think you're perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Put that in your review, I hope.
I kind of did.
You know, again, I think that I've been really fortunate. Despite all the things that went wrong with me, would I have wished it on my brother or my sisters? Absolutely not. I am really good at being sick with this.
Yes.
And I don't know that the other ones would have been as good as I have been, although I do think that I've also been an inspiration to my family. My brother recently had a tumor wrapped around his optic nerve, and that was
Oh,
very scary. He did go to Mayo. He had successful surgery. They shaved his head. They cut the whole thing open to get in there. And for a while, he looked like, one of Frankenstein's patients with all these staples all over the place. Um, and he was very positive about what was happening and the checkups, and he bought himself a Tesla that drove him back and forth to work without him really having to be able to see. The only thing he couldn't do was he, for fun, was a pilot also, and he couldn't fly. And he just got approval from Mayo Clinic now to begin flying again because they said there is nothing wrong up here with what's going on.
Right.
how
I'm really
wonderful was
proud of him.
that?
Pardon me?
How wonderful was that? My
Right.
goodness.
It was really, really wonderful. So, of course, he bought an airplane hangar and an airplane, and he's going to have fun.
Go big or go home.
Right. And then their toys. But yeah, so I do think that I was a good influence on my family. I think they've had to be strong because they were always worried about me. Half the time when I was having various surgeries on my eyes, I didn't even tell my family. But my mom, well, everyone was in Texas at the time that I first had my experiences with retinopathy. And I mean, when she did come, she would stand at the foot of my bed and she'd be like, "You my hospital bed." She'd be like, "Well, now what are you gonna do?" And I'm like, "What am I gonna do? I mean, I'm gonna keep on living, you know?"
Yeah.
You come to Texas and learn how to be a blind person. They have good programs for blind people. I'm like, "You know what, Ma, go home."
Yeah.
I got to cut this out because we're going to be cut out. They're going to do that for us pretty abruptly. Again, you've been an inspiration to more than just your family. Just anybody who's touched this book and went through it, you've been an inspiration to many, many people, John. Great to
Well,
have you.
thank you. Thank you so much.
It's been a
It was
pleasure to
great
have you
being
today.
here today.
Yeah.
Really
All right.
And I
was.
think we'd have lots of stories to share, John. Very
Yeah,
similar.
we have to do this again.
Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ciao,
All right.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye.